Well, I'm Chris Boyle, and it was good to listen to Mark's comments and Dave's comments. So once you get all your regulatory stuff figured out, then you really have to actually move your products. And what we specialize is in international e-commerce and logistics. So, and Dave gave a great lead into what we do. And part of it is, I've got some slides on here that just show some percentages. And this one here is actually from '08 to '09, and this is the increase in search activity traffic in different geographical regions. So as you can see, the search activity across the globe is really going up. And internet search is in a direct correlation to what people are buying on the internet. The majority of search traffic on the internet isn't research driven, it's commerce driven. It's people looking for stuff to buy. And so just internationally, you've got 48% in a lot of the Asian markets, Korea at 44%, and even the European markets. Interestingly enough, if you look at the US, it's one of the smaller percentages. So when you're talking about, and this is mostly B2C, so this is consumers looking to buy goods on the internet.
Why is that number so low in the U.S.? It almost doesn't seem right with Alibaba and all the international.
Yeah, well, it's just, for example, if you look at China, for example, they now have more internet users. They've got a smaller percentage. That's based off population and growth. And so the U.S. is a more saturated market. So the growth in internet searches, which is what that slide was, not the percentage of the population. So the growth, the U.S. is a more mature market and has more internet searches going on, but the growth in the Asian markets is up much higher. Now, for example, China now has more internet users than the U.S. than any country in the world, but they've only got a 19% penetration of their population that's actually on the internet. So they've got 10 times the population, basically what we do, about 8 times, I guess, than what we do in the U.S. However, their actual number of internet users is more, even though only 19% of them are. Here's just some more. This is our percentage of online consumers who made web purchases in 2009. Korea is a highly active e-commerce market, and very active. It's one of the largest markets purchasing international sales, so products out of the U.S. being shipped directly into Korea. Japan is huge as well and has been the leader just until the last couple of years. We work with a lot of the direct selling companies in Utah, a lot of the nutraceutical and supplement companies, and I can tell you that there isn't a single direct selling company in the state, or probably even in the country, that is a leader in its market that doesn't have huge market share in Japan. It's just a huge market. And then the European markets. Australia is, in recent years, has really just started seeing a lot of growth. So as you can see from all of these, it's percentages of consumers related to population. The United States is actually trailing. So the majority of your internet transactions are coming outside of the U.S. This is kind of the same thing. This is, again, traffic, international traffic and orders. It's kind of hard to see this one, but we'll have these slides available if you give anybody wants them. But Canada, obviously, this is from going to the U.S. out. So, and the reason, interesting you'll notice here, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia. So those are obviously 3 U.S.-speaking countries. So that's why their percentages are up, exports out of the U.S., because when U.S. companies start to go international, they'll immediately generally try to go after the easier markets, which are the English-speaking markets, less cultural boundaries, less language issues to deal with, and then they'll go into the European markets where they do have to do translations and deal with foreign languages, but traditionally it's a lot easier to deal with the European languages and culture than it is with the Asian cultures. However, going back to the previous slides, the major percentage of growth is not coming in the European and the U.S. markets right now, because those markets are more mature and saturated. So the major percentage of the growth is coming definitely in the European markets. Your China, Korea, Japan, Indonesia is coming on as a big market now in the e-commerce space.
And that's why we need multi-link. It all pulls together. It all pulls together.
So here's another one. Now this is kind of interesting. This is from some surveys that were done through Internet Retailer and Forrester and stuff. When they basically surveyed their group of internet retailers, find out what were the most challenging and difficult things that they came across. One of the biggest issues, obviously, was credit cards. So when you're taking credit cards internationally, a lot of the U.S. merchant accounts just plain don't let you do it. You can't. You've got different issues. You can't do address verification. You don't have the availability of the fraud screening tools in the U.S. So some markets are really good. For example, Japan, credit card fraud is almost non-existent. But other markets like the Philippines, it's just off the charts. And unfortunately, in a lot of these countries, especially if you're using your U.S.-based merchant accounts, you don't have the same access to the fraud screening and fraud prevention tools that you might have through your U.S. Merchant account providers. On top of that, Visa and MasterCard in some markets are very prevalent and popular. In Japan, you have JCB cards. In different countries, even in the European countries, you have different payment methods. So credit cards aren't the number one way to go. In China, the China Union Pay debit card. Most people buying online cannot use a Visa or MasterCard in China. So if you don't support the China Union Pay and those type of debit cards, you're not going to get any online sales or transactions through China. Germany, Gyro Pay, and different stuff. So there's a lot of payment methods. The next one, by far, is shipping and delivery. So if you've ever gone to a common carrier and tried to ship a package from Salt Lake City to Japan or Salt Lake City to Beijing, you know, the price is just astronomical. I mean, you can spend $90 shipping a 3-pound box with a product in it that costs maybe $50. Obviously, when you're dealing in B2C transactions, what Dave mentioned is there's a big influx in B2C transactions right now. So you lose a lot of the economies of scales when you're shipping direct to the consumer. If you've got a distributor and you can ship ocean freight, it's just a lot more economical to do, but it has its own set of challenges and issues. So you've got two methods to get product in there. One is through some kind of in-country distribution channel and shipping bulk freight to a single location and then distributing inside the country. The other is shipping direct to the consumer, which is what the majority of internet sales are. So there's all kinds of delivery issues related. Your carriers here, you know, our UPSs and FedEx and Postal Service that we all know and love are great here, but you know, getting a package delivered in Brunei, UPS isn't going to be able to help you very much. Or in China, you need to be able to have relationships and work with those local carriers in country. Just like somebody in the U.S. wouldn't expect XYZ Corp to come deliver their package to the door. They're expecting a UPS and FedEx. In Japan, they're expecting a Sagawa or Yamato. In China, they're expecting a TNT or a China Post or somebody else to deliver the package. The other things on there, so security of personal information. You know, in the U.S. we have HIPAA and we've got all the PCI compliance with credit card regulations. When you take personal information from consumers in other countries, you have to be aware of the regulations and stuff of storing that. Anyways, those are just some of the issues there. One, the fully landed cost issue is a big one, and David brought this one up as well. When you purchase something on the internet and you're having it delivered directly to the consumer, in most countries there's duties and taxes due. In European countries, it can be especially onerous with the VAT taxes and stuff. Each country's have different limits. You can get a certain amount in. In Japan, at today's exchange rate, you can get about $150, $180 in completely tax and duty-free on a personal import basis. So when somebody checks out, they don't want to pay $90 for their product, get it there, and have the guy at the door hitting them up for another $80. What happens then? They say, no, we don't want it. They call the credit card company, say, do a chargeback on the card. Now you're stuck trying to get your goods back or abandon them. In most cases, it's cheaper to abandon it because it's just more cost effective than trying to get it back. So you need to be able to give them the duty and taxes and a complete calculation of that at the time it's checked, at the time of checkout. Collect those up front so they know what those landed costs are. They know what their total cost is. At that time, if they decide they don't want to buy it, then you're out the sale, but you're not out the cost of getting the products there. When you do that, then when it's delivered to them in country, it's completely, they paid all their duties and taxes, and they don't have to worry about it.
Chris, does Access help on those kinds of issues, or do you work with very straightforward as all you?
Yeah, so what we do in most of this, we have an international e-commerce platform. We calculate all the duty and tax. We go to a lot of work to do that. We ship in mainly all the Asian and European countries, and have just started really last year into the Latin American countries. So we do, and then what we've done is we've built a distribution network, and so we work with all of the local carriers inside of these different countries. So for example, when we take packages, we're moving, I think 90 to 100,000 packages off the West Coast right now, just into the Japanese in those areas. And so we move everything over as bulk freight, and then we clear customs ourselves. We take it to the local destination units inside a country, and then hand it off to a Yamato or a Sagawa and stuff for the final leg delivery. So the benefits that really provides is, from the consumer's end, it's still being delivered by the best of breed, the delivery companies that they know in those markets. But up to that point, all the way into country and all the way into through clearing customs and all of that, we handle that. So our consumers or our clients on this end have complete visibility into that process. And this is just another one from the same survey. 62% of e-commerce merchants that were surveyed in here basically said the cost of international shipping was killing their business, dealing with problems and delivery delays. We had a great example when we were shipping for a direct sales company here. It was probably about 4 years ago, a very successful company. They sell juice here in Utah, one of the multi-level marketing companies. And we were moving all their products into France. And it was one SKU, it was a case of juice, and we would send the package in, and one day it would get dutied at 15%. Send the very same package in the next day, and the next day's shipments, they'd be dutied at 17, 18, 21 next day. So basically, you had Pierre clearing it one day, Jean-Claude clearing it the next day, Francois clearing it the next day, and it was a different duty rate every time. And a lot of these direct selling companies will have what they call as a distributor kit, which is really printed material, promotional marketing material, DVDs about how to build your business. So we classify those with harmonized code and the duty codes for printed and marketing material. Well, we started getting duty and tax bills back for electronic ignition parts at 40% because these guys at UPS and FedEx, both of them had the same problem. They would just look and they'd say, distributor kit, oh, this must be an electronic ignition part, which is completely different duty and tax rate. So, and you try to figure this stuff out like this with the common carriers as well. They don't have, it's not their own people. They're doing so much volume and so much packages through there. They don't even know who to call to talk to. So that's why we've taken the approach is that we go through and we set up our offices and our people in different areas, and we control the customs clearance process and work with our own brokerages, so we have a little bit of control over that process. And this is the last one here. So some of the barriers to e-commerce to e-commerce here, and a lot of this. So local and regulatory concerns, what Mark brought up, they're critical. We deal a lot with companies that sell products either on the body or in the body. So cosmetics and vitamins and supplements and stuff. Highly regulated market in almost any country. And so some of the other ones, so customer service, that was brought up over here by Keith. It's absolutely critical, especially on the e-commerce space, because you're dealing with individual consumers. And the level of expectation for customer service in Japan and the U.S., for example, are miles apart. I worked for Novell and was with them in Tokyo for about 8 years. And whenever we take Novell's products into Europe, for example, and we used to call it, the PFIGS release for Portuguese, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. We take it into there, and they translate maybe about 30% of the manuals. And there was a lot of manuals for Novell's software. When they went into Japan, they had to translate 100% of everything. Customer service requirements and the level of expectation in Japan were just much, much higher. Again, fraud management rating at 37%. And marketing, total landed costs, duties and taxes, those regulatory issues. So those are the big, really challenges that most countries or most companies face, and the barriers of starting out into the international space. So just finally, the do's and don'ts, and we've all kind of talked about this. All the panelists kind of talked about this a little bit, but it seems like there's a lot of complexity to this, and there is. And that's why number 2 there is really don't go it alone. Everybody's kind of said this. Work with the people who know the space. Also, and why do you want to do it if it's so complex? I mean, the U.S. e-commerce and the U.S. retail market, we all know, is not doing so well. And all of our clients are seeing, every client that we work with, seeing significant and substantial growth in their international markets. The problem is they may see 30% growth in their international markets, but their international market is only 3% of their overall revenue. So they're only getting a 6% growth. So they want to obviously increase that space. Why we're seeing so much growth in the international markets is, for example, the exchange rate. The Japanese yen now is trading at 80, 81 yen. It hit 79 the other day. Just a year and a half ago, it was at 115, 120. So what does that mean? It means the same Japanese consumer can buy your product now, and it's 30% less than it was 18 months ago. You're still making the same amount of money. He's just getting it for 30% more cheaper because his currency is so much stronger. Same thing with the euro, not as dramatic, but same thing with the Chinese RMB. Pretty much every currency in the major markets is up against the dollar. So it's really good for exports because it makes the U.S. products much more affordable in those markets, so it helps drive demand. Unfortunate for some of us who have to pay bills in Japanese yen and stuff like that, but it's a great thing for selling the products. Again, work with logistics companies and legal companies and everybody who have the expertise in those fields. What we've seen again on number 4, the number one reason for is when people, trust is a big thing. If you're somebody in Japan or China and you're going to be buying a pair of clothes or sneakers or something, come to an English website, you're not going to buy. Your sites have to be localized. You have to establish that basically in-country presence so they think they're buying from a Chinese company. You have to be in their native language, and you have to be able to give them customer support in their native language so they can get on there and read what the return policies are instead of trying to wade through 2 paragraphs of English. Marketing, start simple. A lot of the marketing techniques, especially for online commerce that work in the U.S., work in other countries. Google's pretty good in most markets. Markets like China, they're completely out of now. But the same principles apply. Working with search engine companies in China like Baidu is the big one there. And so being able to establish your marketing and online marketing strategies there. And then, don't be overwhelmed. It seems complex, but it really boils down to is finding the right partners, just like when you're in country and on the ground, finding the right distributors, and over here finding the right partners that work with. All right, thanks.
Yes.